crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die. Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, me and Doulas all of me. I saw him and I had to get him, yeah, I finally got him. I boosted me up the solution, I am such a problem, crazy goon and gone, that pollution with the goons, got the super shoppers, and they hootin' holler when we comes out of super partners. You started, we gon' finish it. Welcome to the wild side. You know what the business is. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a... I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility. Money. Put your hands up, everybody knows that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay. Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, me and Solomon. If I saw him and I had to get him, yeah, I probably got him. Going to boost to mix up the solution. I am such a problem, crazy goon and gone up that pollution with a group of goblins, super choppers, and they hootin' holler when we scoopin' dollars, losing partners. But if you started, we gon' finish it. Welcome to the wild side. You know what the business is. Been running fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die.
The music is so cool.
I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I reign on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a... I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility. Money. Put your hands up, everybody knows that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay. Been running fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die. Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, me and Solomon. If I saw him and I had to get him, yeah, I probably got him. Going to boost to mix up the solution. I am such a problem, crazy goon and gone up that pollution with a group of goblins, super choppers, and they hootin' holler when we scoopin' dollars, losing partners. But if you started, we gon' finish it. Welcome to the wild side. You know what the business is. Put your hands up, everybody knows that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility. Money, power.
Fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go Jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go Jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything.
I just found out there's no sound. Thank you. That's the benefit of having my people registered in my office. Hello, everyone. How many times have we all done that in the day of Zoom, huh? Talking with your mute button on loud and proud. Mute. So I'm Saria. I'm one of the creators of the Black Wealth series, and we have a whole team, and you guys probably saw them in the commercials. The intention of the Black Wealth educational series is really to highlight how systemic racism functions through so many different areas and how it ultimately impacts our wealth, you know, and I say systemic racism really functions best through poverty. So we've been doing this series. This is our second year doing it. And we have no end in sight. We really want to keep educating people, especially because right now everyone's talking about critical race theory as a hot topic. And what I realized is they're not talking about critical race theory. They're just talking about Black history in America. People just don't want Black history to be taught to people, and they don't want any transparency. And part of that, part of the reason is if we don't understand what's going on, then we can't really prepare, and it just keeps happening because we don't know what did happen. So that's really one of our intentions around the BWM series. Let me do that. Another reason why we're doing this series is because we also want to highlight the importance of financial education when it comes to helping families plan and all of that. So I'm going to start first, and I'm going to share who we are and what we do. But you guys, there is a chat room. You are welcome to chat. You're welcome to chat questions. You're welcome to say hello. You're welcome to just create a community. Our goal is really to create a community in this space. So use the chat room. At the end of the presentation, I'll be able to ask Charisse your questions, as well as have her elaborate on anything that might have been might not be as known and for us as it is for her with her presentation. So also, I would love for you guys to promote the series on your social media. So if you have Facebook, if you have Instagram, if you have LinkedIn, please feel free to promote this series so that we can get more people in the classes. Now I'm seeing something that's saying it's freezing. Charisse, am I freezing on your end?
I can see you flow in and out.
Okay, so it's not freezing, or is it freezing a little bit? Okay, good. All right, thank you. Okay, I just want to make sure. Sometimes we have our own individual computers that are freezing, and then sometimes it's our computers that are freezing. Okay, you guys, so let me get started before I introduce Charisse and share what I want to share, which is about the financial sector, which I think is such a important conversation. So when we started this presentation, you guys, one of the things that we were really looking to see was how many people of color are actually in the financial sector. And you guys will be so surprised to find out that the number is so small that it's actually not recorded. And I like this quote from Lincoln: the best way to predict your future is to create it. What I want to predict is more people of color in the industry. So that's what we're trying to create here. So I'm going to really share two things. I'm going to share some financial education bits, and I'm also going to share who we are as a company. So again, everything that we do, you guys, it's going to be word of mouth. So pretty much help us out. Think about people that you guys know that can benefit from the conversation. And also know that finance is a hot topic right now. There are so many experts on social media, Instagram, and all of that good stuff. However, again, there aren't a lot of people of color in the actual financial sector. So the people that we're looking for, they're people with people skills. They're coachable. They want to learn. They want to grow. So if you have anyone in your life like that, we're looking for them, because finance is such an exceptional business opportunity. We're one of the industries that funds technology, healthcare, so many things. And we think right now we're at the right place at the right time. And we have some great core values for those of you guys who have motivation that's not connected to money. And there are a lot of you guys out there like that. So there's a dramatic need for financial education. Debt is rising, especially student loan debt in the Black community. Most people don't have enough money to cover emergencies. I don't know how that's been affected by COVID, because we did have a stimulus. Most people don't have life insurance outside of their employers. And I don't know, again, with the deaths of COVID, I don't know how that's going to affect the economy either. But these numbers are very, very grim if you can look at the screen and read over it. But please know that this is for everyone. When you start thinking about Black America, it's actually more it's worse. So people are stressed about money because they just don't have a strategy. They don't have any help. And you guys, there are studies that show when people lose a certain percentage of their retirement while they're retired, they die within 2 years. So financial stress can actually kill you. It's a real thing. So what we're trying to do is save lives of people who are targeted through systemic racism to be in a situation where their income is not the same as everyone else. And we're one of the few companies that are doing that. So we consider ourselves to be completely different. Our business owners, we can help whoever we want. And most of us choose to help people who are just like us, middle income, hardworking people with integrity and good hearts. We help clients understand how their money works, which I'm going to teach you guys about in a moment. And we just help people build stronger foundations, and hopefully that foundation will be transferred to their generations. And when you think about wealth, wealth is not riches. Wealth is not cash flow. As a matter of fact, cash flow and wealth have nothing to do with each other. And when I say cash flow, you guys, think about our wealthy, our rich in the Black community. Think about our celebrities. Think about our athletes. They have cash flow. They don't necessarily have wealth, right? So what we know is wealth has a foundation of financial independence, and that's where you're working because you want to work, not because you have to. And as a company, if you're curious about how we help families, just know that we're not selling to anyone. We're educating them first. So if you are curious, but you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not a salesperson, or my niece just graduated from college, but she hasn't really gotten a job yet. She might be interested, but she's not a salesperson. That's fine. You can still introduce them to us. Now that we talked about that, let's talk about some basic financial concepts. And then when we get done, I'll tie how this relates to birthing in the Black community. So what is important, right? Financial education is taught at kitchen tables of the wealthy. It's taught to them from birth. And unfortunately for everyone else, we're taught different things. We're taught to work hard. We're taught traits, but we're not taught financial education. So the rule of 72 is a really great concept to know. The rule of 72 says if you take 72 and divide it by the interest rate of whatever your investment is getting, it'll give you the years that it takes for your money to double. So if you're getting 2% from the bank, that means your money's going to double every 36 years. We maybe have 2 lifetimes of that. If you're getting 4%, your money's going to double every 18 years. If you're getting 6%, your money's going to double every 12 years. So we want to make sure that our money is doubling, because the rule of 72 also works for credit cards. Credit cards are charging 25%. Some car loans are 12%. Student loans are 6%. Mortgages are 3 to 5%. So our liabilities are compounding and growing aggressively, unfortunately, but a lot of our assets aren't. And for those of us who are, experimenting in the cryptocurrency world, in the fast stock world where they're day trading and things of that nature, just know that the returns might be better than what we're talking about, but so are the taxes. And the game is always to make money, but also keep it. And this is a script or a page about the power of time. And it's really just talking about doing everything now. So often, especially when we're trying to figure everything out and we're planning, so often we're always, if this, then, if I can pay this off, then I'll save. If I can do this, then I'll save. When I do this, then I'll save. And it creates a habit that actually affects our wealth, if we're able to create wealth at all, because time has a value when it comes to money. And if we're not saving, what happens is that we don't get to create that wealth again. So to go back to taxes, this is the taxes. So my favorite part about this page here is that there are 3 ways to pay taxes. There's taxable investments like your stock account, your checking account, your income. There are tax deferred investments like your retirement accounts. You guys, most of us learn about retirement accounts when we're like 18 to 20. which I think is very interesting considering that retirement 401k started in 1975. So isn't it interesting that we all know about them, but we don't know about tax advantage vehicles, right? So the reality with these tax deferred accounts is that we're paying taxes at a higher amount in the future. But we don't know what taxes will be in the future. We just know that 9 times out of 10 is going to be higher. And then tax advantage, wealthy people really dominate this area. And how they dominate this area because they have businesses and things that get deductions, whereas employees, which most of us are taught to do, we become just tax-paying citizens, right? They're getting deductions. Meanwhile, we're paying taxes. And then with their reduced income, what they do is they put it into vehicles where they don't pay taxes anymore. So all of their life is about making sure that they have tax advantages, right? So we take those concepts and then we actually create a financial plan or a financial needs analysis based on every person. And we do this free of cost, you guys. There's no cost. It's free. It's in everyone's budget. We're at the top of the year. This is a great time to really sit down and get clear about your financial goals. What are your goals? Everyone has financial goals, even if it's to vacation, pay off debt, just make sure they understand how their money's growing. Everyone has financial goals. So we look at all of the things that affect your wealth, from your cash flow to your debt, right? Emergency savings, your proper protection, which is insurance, and your assets so that you can build wealth. And then we also want to make sure that you're protecting it through a trust or some sort of document to make sure that if something happens to you, your family isn't put in some sort of financial turmoil. And these are some of the companies that we work with. If you recognize any of these companies, put yes in the chat. If you recognize any of these companies. All right. Awesome. Okay. And in terms of our company, we're just a different model by design. We actually don't fit into either of these models. We're just a bit of a hybrid with both, you guys. So just consider the opportunity. And that is where I am actually done. So I told you I would be super quick, but I know that you guys really want to know about Black wealth and how it's impacted by this particular area. So how wealth is impacted by giving birth is the mental aspect of wealth. I mentioned earlier that if someone passes away if someone loses half of their retirement, they pass away within 2 years of that activity. Right. So there is a financial footprint that happens with our bodies and our health. With childbirth, it's not necessarily that, but it is stress. There is stress that can impact a family, which also impacts their earning capability. So I was very interested in this conversation because I didn't know anything about it. And I'm excited that we have Charisse, Charisse Fontes, who has garnered over 7,000 followers on LinkedIn by sharing the reality of her experience as a full-time employed, unhoused human being. And she wants to remind people that she's a human being. You guys know, I think that's so unique because I feel like that's not uncommon for us as Black people to have to remind people that we are also human beings, right? But today she has 2 very successful businesses. She's a doula, which is a skill she learned in Bali. And doulas are trained professionals who provide support to birthing people before, during, and after childbirth, but they do not deliver babies. And this is such an important service, and she'll talk a little bit more, and I want to just get her started. This is such an important service because Dove actually has a program where they're sponsoring Black doulas for Black mothers. And I think this couldn't be a better enough time. The birthing industry is having a very big problem with Black women. They say that doctors are to Black women, what cops are to Black men. So we need to know a lot more about that. So even if you're a person like me with no children, you have friends with kids, you have families with kids. And if you don't know, sometimes they don't know. So please bring your hands together, do a virtual welcome, say welcome in the chat room to Miss Charisse. Charisse, let me know when you're ready for me to put your presentation up, okay?
Okay, can you see me and hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear. I know.
Okay.
I can ask that part.
Awesome.
I can see you and hear you perfect. Your hair looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much. I am so excited to talk about this topic. My husband jokes, I'm either talking about culture or I'm talking about birth. And so today I get to talk about birth. So if you go ahead and throw up the presentation, I'm going to, and feel free, any questions that you have, put them in the chat. I can pause and go through as needed. But I'm going to talk about the importance of the Black doula. As I was introduced, I'm Charisse Fontes, and I am human. I am so excited to share my humanness with you. And if you go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Again, reiterating human. It is so important. It is what connects us all. I'm a mom of 5. So my oldest, interesting enough, will be 18 this year. My youngest is 3 years old. And I have a very interesting story about the two as we were speaking about birth in this aspect. I'm a 3-time author. So I've authored 2 children's books and 1 book around company culture. I'm an international speaker. I'm a heart leader on all things around people and culture. And I partner with companies during the day around creating healthy and inclusive workplace cultures. I also run a nonprofit called Humanity Power that is raising the humanity in individuals and communities. And with the unity within our humanity, we can help end the isms that are harming our humanity and planet. As I mentioned earlier, my heart work is being a doula, but I'm also an anthropologist. I study cultures, religions, and tribes. And that's what really helps bring a lot of this cohesiveness of what I'm going to share with y'all today. And so that is a little bit about me. So before we dive in, I thought it would be a great foundation to talk around the history of birth. Because whether you've heard of a doula or you've heard of a midwife or you've heard of home birth, there is a lot around birthing that I think is really, really key that is being missed from the entire equation that falls into some of the statistics you hear around Black birthing. So I'm going to give a very in-depth, high-level overview of birth over the last few centuries. And it's going to really paint the picture of what we're going to be talking about today. So before that, I'm going to just ground ourselves. And you've already shared a little bit about what a doula is, but I'm going to tell y'all what a doula is. By definition, next slide, please. A doula comes from the Greek word woman who serves. Now, there's some controversial conversations happening around the actual word doula in the birthing community. Some doulas actually refer to themselves as birth workers versus doula, because also in translation, it is doula can also mean slave. So there's just being mindful of that word. Some people will call themselves birth workers. Some people will refer to themselves as doulas. There's no incorrect way. It's just how you're vibing. And a doula is a trained and experienced in childbirth who provides continuous physical, emotional, informational, and support during the birther's experience. It has women, but as we know, there's a lot of different identities. So it's not just women that are birthing nowadays. And also in the birth and the immediate postpartum. The way I like to sum up what a doula does is we do everything but catch. So we don't catch the baby. We can, but that is not what we are trained to do. And later I'll share with you a little bit more about my specific doula-esque-ness in all of this. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where I meant to update, but I'm going to give y'all a few dates around history of a doula and just history of birth. So in the 1960s, people were birthing with midwives and other females that were supporting the people in birth. So there's a book called The Red Tent. There's also another reference of the farm in Tennessee, where a lot of families go and birth their babies. They're surrounded by other women. So this was really big in the 1600s. There were a lot of postpartum healers. It was very holistic. So I just want you to paint the picture around that in the 1600s. Now, in 1692, this one is a really big nugget of history. The Salem witch trials started taking place. So it was there are people that were using modalities like plants and different herbs and different tapping into more the spiritual component of birth that were considered like outliers and not treated right. So Salem witch trials happened. So this is all very relevant in this history of birth. And then in the 1700s, which is also really interesting, between 1692 and the 1700s. And if you look at any type of, let's say America specifically, if you look at racism in America around 1700s, there was a lot of stuff shifting in that time. So physicians during that time were presented that the ideal birth requires medical intervention. Now, this is a conversation that we could probably have for the rest of this evening, but when it comes to birth, the best way to birth is to leave the birther alone unless there are complications in which the midwives or the physicians are involved. But usually it doesn't require pathology. But at this point in time, pathology was brought in. And I bring up the 1700s because that's when a lot of the other isms started to show up, in addition to racism, sexism, classism, colorism, and so on and so forth. So I think it's really a big, interesting component how birth was now treated as this thing that needed to be fixed. And then our society is losing more and more of humanity in that area. What also happened around that time, 1750, there was some interventions around controlling hemorrhaging. So doctors had to start to figure out ways to control hemorrhaging. Now, I probably should preface that I'm not sensitive to language when it comes to talking about fluids and things like that. So if you are, I just want to let you know that I will be talking around a lot of medical verbiage. So just bear with me. I'll try and not make it as graphic, but it is really helpful to paint this picture of again, this history of birth and like how doulas came into be. And then around 1847 is when chloroform was introduced as a, what is the word? Anesthetic for childbirth. So that meant like now what y'all hear is an epidural. I don't believe they use fentanyl anymore, but the most common one is an epidural. They were using chloroform on women in birth. And this is women of all ethnicities. I want to just be very clear because this paints another big picture of how birth has transcended over the years. I'm going to fast forward to between the 1847 and 1900s. There was a campaign against midwives. So if we go all the way back to the 1600s, a lot of births were done with midwives and what would be known as a doula. But then in the early 1900s, there was this campaign against midwives that basically was like, hey, you birth with a midwife, and they used to call them mammy midwives or different types of midwives. The ethnicity really wasn't spoken, even though there were all different types. But you birth with a midwife, you need to come to the hospital. It is cleaner here than it is giving birth at home. And that's when we started to see a huge shift in birth and how birth was done. I like to talk about how a lot of our issues we see in our society today could be solved by how we birth, how we bring in a human, essentially. And the more we've gotten towards pathology, the less we've gotten towards our humanity. And there's a big component that I'll talk about in a minute around birthing in itself. So bear with me as I continue this timeline. So then so we're kind of in the 1900s, but like tapering off, there was something that happened in the 1860s where there was a lot of deaths happening in childbirth. And I'm not sure if y'all remember this story, but I'm not going to do it verbatim, but it was this doctor that basically was like, hey, I think women are dying in childbirth because we're not washing our hands. What doctors were doing was they would go work on somebody that had already passed away from a disease and then go in to help a woman birth their babies. And so they were like, why are all of these women and babies dying? Well, this one doctor was like, hey, y'all, like, I think we need to wash our hands. And they're like, no, that's ridiculous. That can't be it. Later on, they found out that, yes, it was the hand washing that was causing the cross-contamination, and women were and babies were passing away. And so you see how like there's been this like trend of medical interventions, almost, I will say, almost like experimenting on different parts of birth. And I will touch on some other components where a lot of the terminology that we hear around birthing was developed by a male. And so there's a lot of interesting dichotomies that come with that. In the 1900s, which is, again, we're going to go back to there, most babies, 90 to 95%, I just want you to sit with this percentage, in the US were born at home by midwives. So remember when I just told you that there was this campaign against midwives in the early 1900s? They were like, hey, trying to get people to birth in the hospitals. And so a lot more stuff happened, which I'm not going to go into. But in 1955, Dr. Friedman develops Friedman's curve, which is a generalized chart for labor progression that's still used today. I want to pause here for a second. I'm not sure if y'all can just put in the chat how many of y'all have had birth or given birth before, whether it's vaginal birth or cesarean birth. But usually they tell you how you're supposed to progress during labor. This was created by Dr. Friedman, and we're still using this today. This was in this is 1955, which is really kind of astonishing if you think about it, because very much like life, birth is not linear. It's very lunar, and everybody's body is different, and there's a lot of different factors that carry on how someone births. So I think that's a really big thing to pay attention to. So right around this time for this curve, 1955. So I gave you a stat earlier, 1900s, 90 to 95% of babies were born at home. 1955, 95% of births occurred in the hospital. That is when we started to see a huge, huge shift, not only in our society, but in how birthing would be done even till this day. So fast forward, we're going to the, there's a part in this within the 1955 where they started to incorporate the birth support in the labor room, which was great, but it almost defeated the purpose of giving birth, if that makes sense. It's in a sterile environment. It wasn't how it was before. So they did allow different people to come in and assist in the birth room. They didn't allow the father or the partner to come in until around 1970. But it was a big deal at that time. And it was sort of, I think, masking the fact that there were no more home births, or they were trying to extract home birth into more of a hospital setting. In 1979, 99% of births took place in hospitals. In the 1980s, the first large-scale randomized study around electronic fetal monitoring was released. Fetal monitoring is a big, big thing in hospitals. If you do a home birth, you don't have fetal monitoring. The midwife does a lot of the stuff by trade. You go into the hospital, you're most likely going to experience fetal monitoring, which, I'm going to just share, in my opinion, introduces doubt and fear. Anytime you introduce doubt and fear to a birther, they become less empowered to have more, to advocate for informed consent. This is a big, big part in what we're seeing right now in the birth world. And then if we relate this back to birthing while Black, that's also another big thing too, because you tend to trust the doctors and lean less on your own empowerment. My philosophy as a doula is, I don't care how you give birth, be empowered. That is the biggest thing. Be empowered, have informed consent, which means you know the risks and the benefits up front, and you can make the decisions. If it's an emergency, you'll know, and things will be handled the way it is. If it's not, you have time and space to make some big decisions between now and when you birth your baby. Okay, wrapping up this timeline. In the 1900s, Childbirth Summit is held and to improve the maternity services. So someone must have been like, this is not working. We need to figure out how to fix what's going on. I didn't touch on the cesarean birth rates, but at this time they started to introduce VBACs, which is vaginal birth after cesarean. So that was a big thing that's even still nowadays is kind of controversial. Can you have one? Can you not have one? Some doctors don't even do it. If you've had one cesarean, they're like, we're going to do another one. That's a whole nother conversation. But in 1992, Donna, Doulas of North America was formed. So you start to see this presence of these doulas emerging. And now we're into the 2000s. And there's so much around birth that has changed, so much data that has come out. And it really comes down to two things. You birth how you live. So what I really want to share around this concept of timeline of birth is, historically, it was an empowering process to birth. And then as it moved to pathology, we lost our will to advocate and get informed consent around things that had to do with our bodies and our babies. The other side is the after effects of a birth. There are so many birthers out there that are holding on to stories that are trauma-filled and painful. When I first became a doula, one of the assignments that we had was to ask our parents, our mothers, or whoever was around, what our birth was like. This was often the first time that a lot of mothers got to express where they were in birth. And still to this day, as a doula, I hold space for anyone's birth story. And it's just like, there's a lot that comes out. And it's really, really important that whatever is done around birth, it is empowered. Whatever is done around your child, you are empowered, not to do it out of fear-based energy. And that's a big thing that was introduced around the hospitals. So I'm going to pause really quick. I see a question here. Yes. Okay. So cesarean births, there's a documentary I would highly recommend y'all watch, The Business of Being Born. It's done by Ricky Lake. I don't know if I got any 90s folk up in here, but like Ricky Lake did this documentary. It is fire. It talks around the cesarean birth and how it saves not only the doctor's time when it's scheduled, but it also makes money. Now, I'm not saying you should be super skeptical of the hospital and the environment. I'm saying be empowered and be informed before you start making decisions around your body, your baby, and your birth. Okay, next slide, please. So, birth is broken. I sit here and I can tell you, based off of as many stories as I've seen and where I've kind of heard certain gaps, birth is broken. It was never designed to be a business. It was never designed to take away. It was only designed to give life. And right now, where we currently are in the birthing space, is there's the options are you have a home birth, you have a hospital birth, you have a birthing center experience birth, and most people will not do a home birth because of all the fears and the unknowns, versus really stepping into what would empowerment look like around a hospital birth, a home birth, or a birthing center. The critical thinking around birth is really, really key. Nobody knows your body better than you. No doctor will ever know your body better than you. And so really listening to yourself is one of the biggest components to birth. And I will also say, even if you have not given physical birth, you have birthed something. And that process of birth is very similar. And so as you think about it, be empowered, and we can start to fix what's broken in birth, because that's what's missing, that empowerment, that informed consent. Now, if there is an emergency, you will know. Your midwife will know. There will be signs. You will have something will lead to, and not to say that everything is going to be perfectly fine if you follow certain ways of birth. Things happen, but for the majority of birth, most of the time, the body does exactly what it needs to do when it doesn't have these inhibitors. Just like if you're trying to birth something new, like a business or a book, you do a lot better when you don't have a lot of outside noise and things that are convoluting and things that you might need to clear up. But that's one thing I wanted to share there. And shout out to the 90s, baby. And you were a cesarean birth. Oh, very interesting fact about birth. This is kind of philosophical, so follow me, y'all. There was something that was said that the feeling that we are experiencing when we are born is the same feeling we will be chasing for the rest of our lives until we die. So think about that when we talk around cleaning up generational things or shadow work within ourselves. Is there's something around our birth origin, how we come into life. Next slide, please. All right. So I want to talk to you about being a doula. Obviously, I'm Black. Like I just think that's like, okay, that is what it is. But as a doula, I've never really advertised that, and I've helped many families and ethnicities birth their babies. But what I find to be really interesting about where I stand as a doula, again, like I said, I'm all about the empowerment component. And that was because my births, all 5 of them, I can't tell you they were trauma filled. I mean, I go through each one. I had my first birth when I was 18. And I will say that there were circumstances that outside of the birth itself that were difficult, but the birth itself, I still remember Dr. Lee. I still remember the whole situation. And then I've had births after that. And I've always been fascinated with pregnancies and women and bodies and babies. Oh my gosh, you show me a baby and I'm all over it. So I was working at a tech company, and I don't even remember when I was like, oh, let me look into being a doula. I can't even tell you the origin of it. It just like something came over me, and then I just started researching, and I became a certified birth and postpartum doula through Cornerstone Doulas, which I think is one of the best doula programs out there. And very shortly after I became a doula, I learned about Bali and how they have a birth center for gentle birthing. And I had to go see it. So very shortly after I became a doula, I did my first birth, which happened to be a coworker that I worked with. It was an amazing birth experience. Me and the family still play. We do game night pretty much every other month, and we stay in touch. I love their baby. I love their family. There's a lot that happens when you connect with a family as a doula. And then I became pregnant, and I was about 11 weeks pregnant, and I went to Bali. And I stayed in Bali for about a month, and I visited the Bumi Sahad Birth Center. I highly recommend looking it up. Basically, what they do is it's very outdoors, and they do gentle birthing. So what that looks like is there are women walking around in labor outside, just left alone in labor, birthing. They'll go into a room to give birth, or I'm pretty sure they probably have had babies delivered on the grass, but like it is completely open. It is very gentle birthing. It's unlike anything I've seen here in the US. And I would love to bring something like that. In fact, that's one of my dreams, is to bring something like that here to this space, because it was so transformative. But being a doula really means speaking from the scar versus the wound. And what I mean by that is I've had to heal different aspects of my life and certain things that I've experienced in the doctor's office, not necessarily in birth, but just certain aspects of that. When I sit with the family, I cannot bring that into their space. So I speak from the scar. This is what happened. This is probably what I would have done different. This is something you should know, and not the wound to get them infected and get them fear-based, running that energy. So being a doula has been one of the greatest things, transformative for me. I will tell a personal story. Well, it's all personal, but like I used to be very shielded to I'd keep everybody behind a wall, and I would only let people get so close to me, and I would just be very guarded. When I became a doula, I could not do that. I could not build up a wall, go into a birth room and help someone birth their baby and build the wall back up. So I just knocked the whole wall down, and I just said, here I am. This is where I'm at. And so it has really transformed my life. And I think every person plays a doula role. They just don't know it. Out here in the Bay Area, so I'm near Oakland. There's the daddy doula, which the partners 100% need doulas as well. I've seen it so many times, them going through their own form of labor. So being a doula is really about how can you gift empowerment for someone long enough for them to be able to gravitate to that energy as well, so they can go forth and produce one of the greatest things of their lifetime. It's a really big thing. I will say there is another side of being a doula, is holding space for losses. And that's something else that I have done as well. And there's usually a lot of rituals involved and a lot of closure and a lot of holding space, which means doulas have to have exceptional self-care. And that's something that I really do pride myself on, is how well I take care of myself, how well I rest and recover. Any questions around doulas, please let me know. But next slide, please. All right. So I know I was like, okay, how am I going to talk about the importance of a Black doula? Like, where am I going to anchor this in so y'all listening can understand where the importance of a Black doula comes in? And I've identified, I think, 3 or 4 points I'm going to go through right now. Next slide, please. So, see it, you can achieve it. One of the big things around having a doula that looks like you, whether it's a Black doula, Latina doula, like having a doula that resembles you, you just feel like, I can do it. I see someone else that is going this holistic route. I can do it. It's not often I'm referred to as a hippie, which is all good. I walk barefoot all the time. I'm fine with it. But I rather people see that it exists and they can achieve that versus, oh, the only way that I can get healthy is to take a bunch of medication and, that's the only way I can live my life. There's another way. So if you can see it, you can achieve it. Another thing is it's tribal. You think about tribes, and I have a tribe. My father's Jamaican and my mother has more of the African side. And so we have a couple tribes that we've identified in West Africa and that are still thriving today. And when you think of just kind of going back some time, that tribal aspect is so key. And everyone in the tribe pretty much looked and functioned like each other. So that tribal aspect. And I have on here the Finkster. Why is that so key? So when you are in a tribe, there is a circle of safety. The Finkster, let me explain what this is. If y'all have heard of the Finkster, go ahead and just type in, I've heard of it. But basically what a Finkster is women have 3. So throat, vagina area, and butt. Men have 2, throat and butt. That's the best. I'm not going to be like medically correct here, but basically that's what it is. Finksters are like this. They're like in a circle format. When you do not feel safe, your Finkster closes up. Here's an example. I'm birthing my baby back in the caveman days. And all of a sudden a saber-toothed tiger comes up. I don't feel safe. My Finkster closes. I can go carry and birth my baby somewhere else. Another way the Finkster works is you're at work. You don't feel safe in the environment. Someone asks for your opinion. You don't speak up. Here's another example. Whenever I talk with a family and I'm like, hey, would you like, we're kind of going through all of the conversation. And the last question I ask them is, can you poop in front of me? Because if you can poop in front of me, you can birth in front of me, because that Finkster has to open up. So the big thing around the importance of a Black doula is not only is it tribal, it's something that resonates with us, but it also creates this circle of safety to where we can then open up. And again, you do have to vibe with the person. That is also very key. So I'm not just going to say like, okay, just because they're automatically looking like you, you're going to vibe with them. That's not always necessarily true. But if you can find that tribal aspect, there is that area of safety. And then it connects us to those who have birthed before us. Millions of people have birthed and been born. Like if you go outside and you see people, they were all born. Doesn't matter how, through vaginally or cesarean birth, we were all born. And so sometimes when you see other Black doulas that have given birth or not given birth, it really doesn't matter. But just knowing that you are connected to them. And then I think this other big component here is through our scars, we can help others' wounds heal. So it's almost like knowing that they've been through something and you've been through something and they've healed can also start to help you heal. And the fact that they look similar to you or have the similar experiences really do make it a lot easier to connect. Not saying you can't connect if they don't, but I'm just speaking from the experience of being a Black doula. Sometimes the connection is just there and it really does help move things along. So that's what I would say the importance of a Black doula plays in a lot of this, because again, as we're going into these birthing spaces, there are already odds against us in birth in general. You bring in the isms and then it makes the gap even bigger. Having a doula and having a doula that you can trust and resonate with changes the entire game, thus transforming our humanity. Next slide, please. There we are. Light, love, and gratitude. I want to thank you for listening to me tonight, wherever you are. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, Charisse Fontes. You can also visit my site, charissefontes.com. Or if you're interested in more about the stuff that I do as a doula, you can visit deardoula.love. And I'm happy to connect and answer any questions you have, hear your birth stories, and hold space. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. That was really informative. So what do you think was the catalyst? I don't know if you know this, but what was the catalyst to the Dove sponsorship of doulas? What happened there? And I have heard of the Dare, it's not Dare
Donna?
Black Mamas, the Black Mamas Matter organization.
Okay.
And I think they probably, were probably spearheading that as well. But what do you think that, do you know anything about that?
I did hear about the Dove sponsoring the doulas. I thought that was really huge. I would imagine it stemmed from a lot of the inclusion and diversity work that was happening, because I did see a lot of that kind of tapering into coming out of a lot of that conversational work. I'm not, yeah.
Do you mean like during right after George Floyd was murdered, when everyone started paying more attention to their diversity? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I would say that the doula, the Dove doula stuff I saw last year. So I think it was coming off of, yes, the answer is yes. 2020, George Floyd, and then all of the inclusion and diversity stuff, and then this came out of it. I don't know if they were working on it before. I don't really stay close to brands like that, but I did notice that it was coming out around that time.
Yeah. No, I thought it was really interesting. Now, my question is, and you guys, we've had so many different doctors we've had so many doctors. We've had psychiatrists, we've had medical doctors, we've had historian, like PhD doctors. We've had so many doctors. And they've all kind of touched on, very similar to you, the history of Blacks in the world. They went more into like the experimentation on Black women and the fact that they thought we could take pain more and things of that nature. And I definitely do think there's kind of a callousness that goes along with birth when it comes to Black women. But what's interesting is that it sounds like it was there from the start when they started in there, just going from woman and dirty hands and just going up in there, just killing everything. And so there's always kind of like, I got it. There's kind of like, don't tell me I got it type thing happening when it comes to Black women. And where does the doula act? I have no kids, Charisse.
Yes.
And I have a vivid imagination. So in my imagination, the Black doula is like the bodyguard in a delivery room. She's like making sure that nobody's in there doing something that they shouldn't be doing and protecting the woman who's giving birth that way. Because I'm like, somebody needs to speak up, because even one of our speakers, she's going to be talking about, I know Ricky Lake's doing the documentary about Black birth, and Tatiana Ali is doing it as well. She's going to be coming up with Robin Kelly at the end of the series. But she said that the guy she was asking questions, and he was basically like, why are you talking? So it's kind of like that callousness. But because she was so vulnerable, she actually he did something that made her pass out, and now her voice was gone completely. So I'm like, what is the doula? The person who's like,
yeah. So one thing that is really key about a doula is we are the eyes, ears, heart, and feet of that birthing room. And what will happen, because we understand what the birther is up against, what we do is we hold the space first and foremost for the birther. And then let's say the doctor or the nurse comes in and they make suggestions. For example, here's an example. We want to see how dilated you are. So they want to do a vaginal check. The interesting thing, which again, risk and benefit here. The risk is every time they put their fingers up there, bacteria can get in there. And if you're laboring for a long period of time, bacteria, time, moisture equals infection. Infection leads to baby industry, like immediate cesarean. So we will say, they'll say, oh, we would like to check you. The doula will give the look to the birther. I've done this so many times. And then we'll be like, okay, can you just give us a second and we'll talk about it. So the thing with a doula is we've built this relationship with the family for months on end. It only takes a look. And then the nurse and the doctor do need to respect that unless it's an emergency. Now, if it's an emergency, we know when we move out of the way. And that's usually immediate cesarean, 5 minutes or less. So we know better. But when it's like, we want to check you to see how far you are, probably not right now. Like they're not even in transition. So they're still in early labor, which means there's still a lot that can happen. So give them some space. So we act as this Jiminy Cricket and translator, because they're not going to tell you the risks and the benefits. They're going to tell you, oh, do you want an epidural? It's going to help with the pain. They're not going to tell you that the epidural is going to do X, Y, and Z. And then if it doesn't work, then boom, boom, boom. They're not going to tell you that. That's what we're there for. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Now, what percentage of Black doulas are there in the U.S.? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have no idea. That would be a great research question.
No, I'm just curious because I know that a lot of these life-saving things, there aren't a lot of us in the space. Like even here in finance, I think finance is life savings. We don't have a lot. We have so few. There's not a number, and a lot of our doctors have told us there's only 2% Black doctors. And I do feel like if we had more Black American doctors, that would help out as well. I do, and I'm very specific with my language.
I would say, and doctors that aren't heavily on pathology, because that's where we get hooked up. What is happening in the medical field is there's less empowerment around holistic modalities and very heavily on medication. And that kind of, it doesn't solve anything. Like I remember I was dealing with hives, and I was like, I'm just going to do a water fast. The doctor was like, why would you do that? Well, water fasts have cured cancer. It has reversed type 2 diabetes. But that's not something that's really known in the world of pathology. It's usually take a pill, take a shot, there you go. Not fasting, which is very natural in the human experience, but it's different. I see a couple questions. Do you want me to answer those?
Oh, I didn't see them. Yes, please.
Okay. So as a Black doula, do you believe that people of the Afro descent should go back to the way in which our ancestors gave birth, especially with the high mortality rates of Black women experience in the U.S. while giving birth? My immediate answer is yes, but I want to hold space for the fact that is a big leap for a lot of people to embark on. I will say that I would love for people of Afro descent to really look into alternative birthing, because just get curious about it. Don't just hospital. Think about what it is that you're doing with your birth and how natural it is and how unnatural the hospital system was designed to be in the birthing experience. I remember when I wanted to have my fourth baby as a home birth, my husband was like, we can't have her at home. It's too many germs. We later found out that actually it's our germs. It's our stuff. Going into the hospital is actually more opening you more up to things. And so we ended up having, I ended up having a home birth with my last baby. I will tell you, it is by far the best experience. I would relive it over and over and over again. When the baby was coming out, all that was there was a salt lamp and a flashlight the midwife had. And it was the most peaceful process that I've ever experienced. I didn't have to register my baby for a while. Like, we didn't go anywhere. It was amazing. He was not Black. He was not white. He was not male. He was not female. He was just this human for a long period of time. When you give birth in the hospital, you're immediately, what box are you?
Yeah.
And so I would say that I have a knowingness that if we could maybe get closer to how we used to birth, I feel like we will be empowered for the right decision. I don't even think we are empowered yet to make a decision. We're just going with what is being told to us without really questioning or being mindful of, are we empowered around what's being told to us? Like, I stopped taking, well, I'm not even gonna go there. Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
But
I have another question. So you were saying that doctors have the pathology, and maybe it's not a question, but I would love to hear just what comes up for you as I say it. Their pathology doesn't kill anyone but Black women as a majority, right? That we're the ones dying at a higher rate than anyone in the US. So I don't know if there's anything wrong with their pathology. It's just that it somehow manages to kill us more than anybody else, right? So much so that congressional hearings are happening. So and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying if they're treating everyone like humans, I would love to somehow figure out how we can get in on that bus. You know?
Well, I will say that pathology usually means something's wrong, first of all. So when you take birth or pregnancy, nothing's wrong. You're creating life. There's nothing wrong there.
Okay.
So when you bring in something that is like a natural experience and then say, oh, your hips aren't, or oh, this is this, you start to introduce negativity and doubt. And that is what causes a lot of disconnect from what we're seeing. Birth is a natural experience. Yes, there are things where you do need interventions, and I'm not saying that you don't, but for the most part, you don't really need to have all of the interventions that pathology is introducing. And I've sat with Black women, white women, Asian women, all different types of women as a doula, and have heard how people are treated in the doctor's office. Now, does it get worse with certain ethnicities? Absolutely. But most of the time, if you don't have a doctor that is empowering the human and they're just going off of pathology, no one is empowered in that experience.
Got it.
And everyone suffers. Every single person suffers. I went to my last pregnancy, went into Kaiser. The OBGYN was like, I've had 2 home births. And I told her, I was like, well, I'm going to have a home birth with this one. She told me, I don't think you should have a home birth. And I just was like, that makes no sense to me. So again, it's really about.
What did she say when you said that? What did she say?
She didn't say anything.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I couldn't believe that's what she said. And I went ahead and had a home birth, and it was because, and here's another thing that's totally, this is a whole nother conversation, but I've had 5 kids. So at the time I had 4. I immediately am labeled in the medical system as a grand mal tip, which means I've had multiple babies. I am at high risk for hemorrhaging, is what they consider me to be as. Had a home birth, no hemorrhaging, nothing, no interventions, nothing. But that's, again, you're immediately put on, even with women in age. They're like, oh, you're 40.
Geriatric.
Right? You're 40. I remember being in the South and a woman was carrying, she was 60 something, carrying around a newborn, found out that was her baby. Her husband was 75. She had that baby at like 60 something in the South. Like, there's so many things out there that if we just paid attention to our bodies a little bit more and less about what someone's telling us our bodies are, a lot would change. So I think that pathology has caused a lot of problems, but they also have helped when it needed help. But the thing is the discernment. Which one is? Don't just go in.
Yeah. And Dimitri was saying, why do you think in the medical community, doctors continue to have women give birth on their backs when studies have shown that to be counterproductive? You know about that? I don't know.
Yes, because it's the easiest way for the doctor to deliver the baby. It's not about you. That's the thing. It's not about you and how, whereas, okay, I wish I had my midwife here. I love my midwife. Love her. She will catch the baby however I deliver. And as doulas, we are taught to look at all positioning for the birther. So there was a point in my labor, my last baby, I was literally laboring on my stomach. My midwife had never seen anything like this. I was on my stomach laboring. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to push out the baby this way. So I finally turned over and got in a position that I wanted to get in. But when you're dealing with a midwife, a home birth, they're like, however you want to birth, you birth. But doctors are trained. That's part of the history I shared with y'all earlier.
Yeah.
How a lot of that was created. It was trained for the easiest eye position and episiotomy position and the vacuum and forceps position for the doctor, not for you.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
So hopefully that answers your question. I'm a little passionate about this.
So it sounds like, no. It sounds like we just need more of you. We need more people to know. Now, how do people pay for doulas? Because I know Dove has their scholarship program, and it's pretty much they're offering like $1,500 per doula. But how do people normally pay for doulas?
So, one thing that I've noticed, so when I first learned about birth work, one of the first things they said is, you're not going to get rich being a doula. Got it. Understood. We know we're not going to get rich by birth work because it is a big feat to take on. You can probably do around 6 to 7 births a year, maybe. Midwives do a lot more, but they have a whole network. If you have a network, you can do it. But as a doula, I wouldn't do more than 6 because you're going in and out of postpartum. Anyway, one thing I've noticed in the doula community is we keep our rates all within the same range.
Oh, that's nice.
And so some doulas doula for free, and they have that ability while they're learning. And then some doulas range between, I don't know, some 800 to 15 to 3,000, depending on what you're getting. If you get a full service doula that's doing your postpartum, your placenta, a lot of that stuff, you'll probably pay around 3. Okay. But they do have, PPOs do cover doulas. It just takes a lot of work to get it done.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Charisse, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. And I mean, it's just a great history to know. And I love that you started out talking about the Salem witch trials, because I always have to remind people, America has a personality. Even before slavery, we had witches. So there is always some sort of foundation of cruelty here that we just need to, in my opinion, that's what we need to work on. Just empathy and love and all of that, because that's what we need to work on. But thank you so much. We really appreciate you. You guys, please share this information. Go to her site. Her donation link was in there. You can also circle back to our website and donate to her. I'm sure anything's appreciated, right, Charisse? Anything's appreciated.
Yeah, anything, even good vibes. Like, hey, money is energy. So however you want to deliver it, I am always for it. Send the good vibes. I will receive it. But thank you so much for having me here and letting me talk about something that I absolutely love.
Thank you for talking about it. We appreciate you immensely. All right, you guys, I'm just going to play some more of our commercials and we're going to head on out.
Crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die.
Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, me and Sing Asylum. If I saw him and I had to get him, yeah, I finally got him. Going to boost to mix up the solution. I am such a problem, crazy goon and gone up that pollution with a group of goblins, super choppers, and they hoot and holler when we slipping dollars, losing partners. But if you started, we gon' finish it. Welcome to the wild side. You know what the business is.
I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a...
I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility. Money.
You make me feel so good. The music is so cool.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
Welcome to the bottom of the bottom, me and Sing Asylum. If I saw him and I had to get him, yeah, I finally got him. Going to boost to mix up the solution. I am such a problem, crazy goon and gone up that pollution with a group of goblins, super choppers, and they hoot and holler when we slipping dollars, losing partners. But if you started, we gon' finish it. Welcome to the wild side. You know what the business is.
Been running fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot is do or die.
You make me feel so good. The music is so cool.
I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I cannot be stopped. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm right on the top. I'm a boss, I'm a king, I'm a boss, I'm a...
I am a king on the throne and I'm running the kingdom with all my ability, using my strength and agility. Money.
Put your hands up, everybody know that. Don't hold back, got you on go jack. Go DJ, that's my DJ. Party on replay, party on replay.
Fast, crossing county lines just to make my name in the city. Took everything, put it on the line, cause I never break or back down. One shot.